Welcome to the second edition of a digital conference series by Innovationcur. We started this digital conference series 2 weeks ago because we were all affected by the coronavirus and pinned down at home. We didn't want to stay there and be fearful and negative. We wanted to take this opportunity to build a better future. We wanted to highlight the amount of talent and innovation that's happening on our island. Today, we're going to speak about a creative mindset and entrepreneurship. Two topics that are getting closer and closer together, especially in the 21st century. The perception of value and economy is changing rapidly. The millennials and the Gen Z people are valuing different things compared to the previous generation. In a world that's shifting so quickly, how can you as an individual or us all as a nation still remain valuable? How can we keep our heads above water? And how can we combine that with being happy and following our purpose? None of us want to be slaves of our work. We all have this creative side. But how can we combine both? That's what we're going to find out today. Before we're going to kick off this webinar, I'll quickly walk you through the schedule, and afterwards we're going to do a small check-in. I'm super happy to show you this amazing lineup. We're going to start with a presentation about spiritual entrepreneurship by Lysandro Inacio, followed by a law and entrepreneurship combination named the Decoding the Law, Entrepreneurship, Contracts, and You by Danilo Narvaez and Erica Obersi. Afterwards, we're going to really care about what's happening now. This is the moment for us all to care and for us all to work together. Stacey Mac Donald will give a wonderful presentation about doing the work because we give a damn, building bridges for the future of humanity. Afterwards, Levi Silvanie, one of the most inspiring artists in entrepreneurship I know, will give a presentation about self-awareness and entrepreneurship, how you can channel your inner energy and combine that into something that creates value and where you can live from. We will round it all up with a roundtable where all speakers will join us on stage together with Andrew Kirchner, who's one of the co-organizers of the Innovationcur digital conferences, to tie it all together. Before we're going to start, I have one question to ask you, and I want you to really think about it. What would you be doing if you didn't have to work for money? If everything was accounted for, you need to go to work, you could do whatever you really like all day. What would you do? Please write it out in the comments, and let's see where your true passion is. While we're doing this, you can take a couple of deep breaths. Enjoy. We're going to have fun tonight. We're going to have some positive vibes flowing around. So please let me know in the chat. Traveling around the world. Yeah, I would definitely do that as well. So while you're doing this, I want you to really go deep in yourself. Breathing helps me to get the best out of what I want. Oh, everybody is traveling. I'm doing what I'm doing. Question is whether I can make money with it. Well, that's interesting. I see that a lot of people would be traveling. And I think there's a lot of things you could do in traveling. You could be traveling physically, but you could also go on a mental journey. Build my orphanage. Wow. Travel on a full-time. All right, so I already know we need to do more traveling as a group. I'll quickly arrange that we can. Oh, graphic design. Wonderful. All right. The one thing that I realized is that everybody wants to do something fun and something that helps people. They're either working on their health, working on helping others, or learning more about the world. And I think this is what creativity is all about. Expanding your mindset, going from a narrow, this is what I know, to broadening your vision of life. And only if you have this broad vision are you able to pick the things that you care about, but also what other people care about. So today we'll teach you how to combine both the creative side and the essential, up until this point at least, making money. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Lysandro Inacio, the first speaker, to speak about spiritual entrepreneurship, which will be a good foundation for this webinar. I would be traveling and embracing new cultures. Wonderful. Hey, Lysandro, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Luke?
I'm excited. I'm feeling good. I have to be honest, this was quite a rough week, and I think I can speak for all of us that the lockdown is getting to a point. Uh, yeah, sometimes it's bothering you. You want to have your freedom, and I think especially then it's important to keep to keep your mindset calm and relaxed, to be able to be creative, to work, to do all the things that you need to do. And
Yeah.
also, I think another thing is taking the things that you don't need to do now and not forcing yourself to do them. So how are you feeling over the past weeks?
Well, to be very honest, I did a lot of self-reflection. Being at home with my wife and my three children has been a challenge, but it's an opportunity to evaluate where you stand in your family, in your business, but also as an individual. And I must say that I have enjoyed the noise at home. I have given up keeping the house clean. It doesn't work. And I've really had some great conversations with my wife simply because we were not occupied with the things we do normally. And it really caught my attention that this crisis is putting the focus back on the human side of everything. So, of course, it has affected many people, and unfortunately, many people lost their lives. But if there is a positive thing, a positive spin off, it certainly is that the human side has become very more important in daily decisions. Banks have become more compassionate, and the government has put their focus on serving the community much more than before. So that is definitely one of the things that caught my attention.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think Innovation C and what we're doing right now is kind of an extension of that. We're again bringing the people together, going more towards the human touch, which is also why it's so amazing to see all these interactions in the chat. It
Yeah,
feels really like we're one family, and together we can reevaluate where we're
of
standing
course,
now
of course.
and also where we want to go.
Sure.
So I'll leave the stage to you. I'm excited about your presentation. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Well, as you all know, my name is Lysandro Inacio, and I have been entrusted with 20 minutes to give you something about spiritual entrepreneurship. Why am I doing this spiritual entrepreneurship thing? And also give you some very important insights about entrepreneurship itself. So first of all, let me formally introduce myself. My name is Lysandro Inacio. I'm 40 years old. I'm married. I have a family of three children, and I am passionate about entrepreneurship. But my story didn't begin with plans to become an entrepreneur, any aspirations to become an entrepreneur. My story began actually not being able to find a job. And that eventually resulted in me becoming an entrepreneur. But I want to just elaborate a little bit on spiritual entrepreneurship and give you an introduction to this concept. Many years ago, I was sitting in an MBA course with many other professionals, and we were discussing entrepreneurship. And we had this professor coming from abroad teaching us business concepts, teaching us business strategies, and a lot of important theories about entrepreneurship. But suddenly, it came to my mind that having access to all this knowledge, all this information, all these strategies isn't going to make you an entrepreneur. As a matter of fact, many of the people who were sitting in my class are still employed. So my curiosity started a journey to really understand what makes an entrepreneur. And I started my own research on this topic. I began studying myself first because, as I mentioned earlier, I had no aspirations whatsoever to become an entrepreneur. I qualified myself to have a successful career, just like many of us have done. So there has to be something else at play. And during my research, I discovered that entrepreneurship is not knowing theories. It's not about having creativity. It's not about having ideas. And I'm sure that many of you have amazing ideas. I'm sure many of you are super talented and have a lot of creativity to do whatever you guys want to do. But there are some other elements that you need to understand about entrepreneurship. And these elements are spiritual elements. So having access to knowledge, having access to strategies, having access to information is not going to make you an entrepreneur. Having a business degree is not going to make you an entrepreneur. Having business experience whatsoever as an employer is not going to make you an entrepreneur. In my research, I came to the conclusion that there are two spiritual elements that need to be present for you to become an entrepreneur. And these spiritual elements are courage and faith. It is impossible to become an entrepreneur if you do not have the courage to do something that you have never done before, and if you do not have the faith to believe that your investment, that your actions today will eventually reward you in the future. It is impossible. So when I came to this conclusion about these spiritual elements that are fundamental for entrepreneurship, I started to write. And I actually reflected on my own process, on my own transformation process. And it began a very profound journey to understand the traits and qualities that make an entrepreneur. As you may know, I have published this book, Spiritual Entrepreneurship, Cast Net on the Right Side. And this book is actually my result of my research on my own process, on my own transformation. And this book has done very well in Curacao and abroad. And I want you to understand one thing. Everybody is an entrepreneur by design. Everybody has talents, everybody has ideas, everybody has creativity. But as long as you do not get over your doubt and your fear, you will never become the entrepreneur that you can be. So this has enabled me to really understand how I must deal with situations where I feel very uncomfortable, because believe me, having this knowledge is not going to change anything. You're still going to feel insecure. You're still going to have doubt. You're still going to have fear. But it did, however, make me understand that if you are pursuing purpose in entrepreneurship, if you are going to be an original in entrepreneurship, if you are going to do something that has never been done before, you should never allow fear to enter in your spiritual self, because fear is a reminder that you are going to do something that is beyond average. Fear is a reminder that you are going to do something that actually challenges the potential within you to come out. And I know that many of you are maybe considering entrepreneurship, especially during this Corona break, lockdown, and are evaluating if your business concept will make sense. Maybe you are drawing up a business plan, or maybe you are trying to find out the best strategy to penetrate your market. Whatever it is, the best thing you can do is just begin. I've done a quick survey among many entrepreneurs, and I asked them one question. I asked them, what would be the best advice you would give yourself if you could go back in time and sit with yourself? And almost all these entrepreneurs gave this one single answer. They would advise themselves, just begin. And the beauty of it is that many times you're waiting on the right time. You're waiting to have the money. You're waiting to pay off the house, or we're waiting for the kids to grow up. And we have all these excuses to postpone entrepreneurship. And later on in life, we realize that we had all that it takes to succeed already within us, but we just wasted our time because we didn't know what we were capable of doing. And that's why many established entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, if they could go back in time and advise themselves what they would do differently, they would say, I would tell myself just to begin. So if you are postponing entrepreneurship, if you are still doubting if you have what it takes to be successful in entrepreneurship, you already have it. Just begin. One thing I want to share with you, and this is very important because you have to start understanding that you are an original. And being an original requires you to think as an original, to talk as original, but also to gain your own experience. Because you can read all the books out there, you can be mentored, be coached, all these things, but at the end of the day, you will experience things different than I experienced them. So it's very important to just begin and allow your own experiences. Of course, you can use principles, and I'm all about principles, but you have to allow your own experience to let you grow and to become the person you are destined to be in your purpose. So that is just a small introduction on spiritual entrepreneurship. You can find much more about that in my book, Fastnet, on the right side. As you notice, I also published a free book lately. And this book is filled with 21 reasons why you have to be in business. Actually, why God wants you to be in business. I know whenever you introduce God into a concept of entrepreneurship or whatever, a lot of people tend to think it's a religious thing, and trust me, it is not. But I need you to understand this. Entrepreneurship is the best thing ever. We as humans, we have shortcomings, we have limitations, and we are all involved in this unendless process of becoming a better version of ourselves. But what entrepreneurship does is something very, very powerful, because entrepreneurship demands that you become a better version of yourself. It is almost impossible to do business with a bad reputation. It is almost impossible to do business if you do not have the right attitude. So the great thing about entrepreneurship is, despite having all our shortcomings and our limitations, it will bring out the best within you so that we all can benefit from your talents and your potential, and most importantly, your purpose. So having said that about entrepreneurship, having shared with you about the spiritual aspects of entrepreneurship, I just want you to know that you have a limited amount of time to make an impact and leave legacy with your talents and your potential. Time is running out. You don't have a lot of time. You have a limited amount of this very scarce resource to make a difference. And I really want to encourage you to embrace that. I really want to encourage you to understand that fear and doubt are no excuses, and they are actually reminding you that you are going to do something that is beyond your comprehension, and that you are going to impact and leave a legacy. So whenever fear and doubt are troubling your mind, see it as an encouragement, see it as you going beyond your comfort. So that is what I wanted to share about spiritual entrepreneurship. Of course, I have many other books as well. I have this book, Entrepreneurship Designed for Success. It's currently sold out. This is my own copy. It's going to be back on the market very soon. And this book actually speaks about the traits and qualities that we still have to acquire and cultivate as entrepreneurs so that we can have individual and collective success. I see that my time is running out. Luke, I think I have maybe 30 seconds more to go. I like to speak, I like to get more deeper into this, but we will have a round session at the end, and I will be glad to answer any questions you might have. So, well, Luke,
You're right on time. You still have 10 minutes. So we can
I
do
have
some
10
interactive.
minutes.
Yeah, if you want, you can do maybe 3 or 4 minutes or talking more. We can do
Wow,
questions as well.
awesome. I can do an
Have
hour,
on,
but
yeah,
if you
don't
give me
worry.
10 minutes, I'll go on.
Someone asked, what about entrepreneurship? Could you maybe share some thoughts about that?
Entrepreneurship
So
within
while
the
you're working
company.
in a company doing
Yes.
entrepreneurship within the company or something similar.
Okay, perfect. Listen, I want everybody to know that if you have to put your alarm in the morning to wake you up to serve a cause, you are already an entrepreneur. The difference, however, is the amount of transactions that you generate. That is the difference. You see, I have been designed to create multiple transactions with my talents. However, you can always commit yourself to a job and for the security of having that one paycheck, limit the amount of transactions to only one. And believe me, it will always be less and it will never give you that fulfillment, or it will never challenge you to become a better version of yourself. It will just give you that security. And eventually, you will come to a point in life where you have to either settle for less or take a decision to become a better version of yourself. And that is something everybody will have to deal with sooner or later in life. So if you are working in a company, you are an entrepreneur. The only difference, however, is that you are only attracting one transaction per month. And you are limiting yourself to that. And sooner or later, great ideas are going to pop up in your head, and you are going to have to fight that battle between achieving greatness or settling for less.
Awesome, thanks. So Oz is asking if you can speak a little bit about the role of risk, courage, resiliency, and kind of the balance of both. I think before you answer, I would like to maybe share a little bit a story of myself. I officially became an entrepreneur, I think 6 months ago. Before I was, let's say, one entrepreneur. I was doing a lot of stuff, but I wasn't charging people for it. So it wasn't something that I could continue to do. And I think the most important decision I made is I made like a list of things that I need to have every month. It was like, hey, I need to pay rent. I need to do this. I need to do this. And I took a part-time job somewhere that was enough to stay alive. And that took away almost all my fears, because I knew that whatever happens, even if all my clients go away or nobody buys my whatever, I can still eat, I can still sleep, I can go on. And that gives you such a safety net, which really helped me. And I'm eager to hear how you experience that.
Yes. Well, to be very honest, I don't like to talk about risk a lot because I refuse to believe that we are the only creation that have to deal with risk. I mean, okay, there is risk in undertaking without having the knowledge or without understanding the market. There will always be risk, but you have to understand this. Mistakes are an investment towards your success. And we will make mistakes. And I'm writing this book. I have this new book coming out. It's called The 50 Fundamental Principles for Entrepreneurs. I like to play with the word a little bit. So it's for the nerds out there. It's for the guys and the girls who are young, who think they know it all. They have done their research. They have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, and all these other great books that entrepreneurs like to read. And this book is about my best advice to myself. And it consists of 50 fundamental principles that are not about strategy. Because if I could go back in time, I would not discuss strategies. I will discuss principles. You know why, look? Strategies will expire. And strategies are not off-the-shelf products. Every strategy has to be aligned to the individual, and the strategy can only work when the individual can adopt a strategy towards his or her own talents, skills, attributes, and needs. So I would not discuss strategies, and I also guarantee that whoever will pursue entrepreneurship will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. but those are your investments. Those are the trials and errors where you grow and become a more resilient entrepreneur. There's a process that I describe in this new book. I call it going from optimism to effectism. And yes, optimism is a very important resource. You have to be optimistic if you want to try entrepreneurship. I mean, it doesn't work without optimism. But sooner or later, you will have to crack your formula to go from optimism to effectism. And effectism is a unique formula that is actually so personal that I can give you all the advice, I can share with you all my knowledge, but eventually you will have to crack your own code. What works best for you? So
definitely agree with that.
So risk, yes, of course. The risk, it is a valid addition in the definition of entrepreneurship. In the scientific definition, they use the word risk. I rather not use the word risk. I rather use the word grow. And as you grow, you become better. And just like everything else in nature, we too must grow into purpose. Unfortunately, sometimes we think we are smarter than that, and we try to accelerate the process, and that's where we make a lot of mistakes and eventually have a bigger risk of failing. But if we allow the process of growth to take its time, eventually you will grow into your purpose and have success.
Yeah, amen to that. So Reza asked something a little bit more hands-on, like how do you do marktonderzoek, so research on a small island as Curacao, and she even highlighted where people want to realize dreams without doing the work. And maybe before going in, I think a comment already that I could make is you don't need to look only on our small island. I think look at this. You're currently in the Netherlands. You're I assume in Curacao, but we have people from over 5 countries in this webinar. So I think the first question you need to ask yourself: do I need to only provide to people here, or is this a service that anybody could purchase or need?
Yes, we must start considering ourselves export products. If you are going to be in business only to serve Curacao, I'm going to be very honest with you, we do not have enough people on the island to enable you to have sustainable success. People are not loyal. People are not loyal to price. People are always willing to experience something new. So it's going to be very tough. In my book, Entrepreneurship, I discuss 3 questions that every entrepreneur must be able to answer. And if you can answer these 3 questions, you will be in business. If you cannot answer them, you want to be in business, but you do not want to serve a cause with your business. And if you want to be in business and it's about you, then you will fail. The first question is, you have to answer who you are going to serve with your talents. Who has a need in your talents? Who can or will consider you as a source of hope? The second question is, how can you respond to that? How can you respond with your talents, with your skills, with your capacity, with your potential to a need or a demand within the market? And I talk about hope because hope is the biggest demand in the world. And the third question is, how can you serve at the convenience of your market, of your client, of your customer? And that is all about putting the needs of others above your own with the conviction that your needs will be taken care of. Listen, as an entrepreneur, you're not going to make your life any easier.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lysandro. This now was your time. I think it was nice that we could have this discussion. Thank you. Thanks again. Any final words?
Well, I want to encourage everyone to really reflect on yourself, see where you are right now as an entrepreneur, as a spouse, as a professional, and make sure that after this lockdown is over, we all will get to see the best version of you.
Thank you very much. All right. Up next, I'm going to welcome Danilo and Erica on stage. I'll send them an invite now. They're going to speak about decoding the law, entrepreneurship, contracts, and you. And this is something me personally I'm super excited about because I don't know anything about law. I just needed to do the taxes for the first time, and already that was a hassle. Hey, there you are, Danilo. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Good, I'm doing good.
You're doing
In
good?
lockdown, as everybody else.
Hey, Erica. How are you?
Good, good.
All right. I'll give you to the stage so you can introduce yourselves. I think you're better at that than I am. Enjoy. If there's anything, I'm here.
That's good.
Yes, thank you.
I guess I'll start, ladies first. My name is Erica Obersi. I am a law student, first year law student at the University of Curacao, as well as the founder of Pro Bono Sites. I'm here to talk today with you about the law, mostly legal contracts, entrepreneurship, something I'm familiar with, and really excited to be here.
Yes, my name is Danilo Narvaez. I am the chairman at the Association Tienda de Lei. I'm also an attorney at law at Financial Law van Doorne. And well, I want to say, first of all, thank you, Andrew and Luc, for your invitation. Erica will now tell you what we do at Tienda de Lei. So, Erica, the floor is yours.
Sounds good. Share media now. Awesome. So our talk today is about decoding the law, entrepreneurship, contracts, and you. And what does that mean? Well, we're going to talk to you today about who we are at Association Tienda de Lei for short, the employment contract, which a lot of you might be familiar with. What exactly are the rights in terms of an employment contract? And then the famous freelance contract, which is gaining more popularity with people who work online, who have different gigs, what the rights are revolving freelancing, and then ultimately which one is for you. A question that is on a lot of people's minds, and then we'll field questions from you. And the first section is, of course, about Tienda de Lei. We are a group of students, law students, who are on a mission to provide free and low-cost legal services to underrepresented communities in Curacao, and this started in 1980. So we're going to be celebrating our 40th anniversary pretty soon. I'm really excited about that. Probably going to be a virtual celebration, but we have about 40 active members, 5 board members, of which I am one, and Danilo is the chairman. And we also are very fortunate to have an advisory board of legal professionals, such as professors and attorneys at law who advise us on certain cases that we take. We do want to preface that Tienda de Lei is a group of students, so we cannot represent people in court with their cases, but we do provide services such as legal advice, which goes a long way. And we also write some documents that can be taken to court to help with your situation. We are located at UOC, as many of you know, but because of the current crisis, we are handling everything online, and it's going pretty well. Transitioning from having a face-to-face conversation with clients to moving everything digitally. So I'll let the rest go to Danilo, who will go more in depth about labor laws and you.
Yes, thank you, Erica, for your great introduction. Well, now we'll talk about the employment contracts. What is an employment contract? What are the legal requirements? And what are the rights and duties of the employees? I have to make a disclaimer. All the legal requirements, the rights and duties I'm about to mention are Curacao law. So if you're in a different country, other legal provisions may apply. As entrepreneurs, employees, or persons looking for a job, it's important to know what employment contracts are. Knowing your rights as an employee or knowing what you have to take into account as an employer is very important. So what makes a contract an employment contract? The employee must work for the employer for a certain amount of time. This can be for a definite or indefinite period of time. In return, the employee must receive a salary. The employer must have authority over the employee. This is key to a relationship between employer and employee. These are the legal requirements for an employment contract in Curacao. As I said before, in your country, it may be different. In Curacao, an employment contract can be formed both orally and in writing. Both contracts are equally valid, but I always recommend to enter into a written account. If you don't enter into a written account, it can be very difficult to prove what you guys agreed. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. In the following graph, you can see the relationship between the employer and the employee. As you can see, the employer is above the employee and the assignment is in between. So the employer has an authority relationship with the employee. As employee, you have to, as the employer can give you an assignment, and as an employee, you have to follow that assignment. You have to execute it. The employee is accountable to the employer. So what are your rights and duties as an employee? Let's move to the next slide. Yes. Let's start with your rights. These aren't all the rights you have, but I'm just going to mention the more important ones. You have the right to receive a minimum salary, at least the minimum salary. Since January 1st, 2020, the minimum wage in Curacao is $9.62 an hour. This is approximately $1,600 a month based on a 40-hour work week. You have the right to receive full salary payments during pregnancy leave. Also, your employer cannot terminate your employment contract just because you got pregnant or because you went on maternity leave. This is your right. You also have the right to receive full salary payment for a certain amount of time during sick leave. This is usually 6 weeks. Also, you have the right to receive paid vacation days. And last but not least, also very important, because I see this often in practice, non-compete clauses are invalid. I see very often clauses in employment contracts which states that employees cannot work from a competition after the employment contract has ended. These clauses are invalid in Curacao. Now let's continue with the duties. You have to follow your supervisor's instructions. Follow your job description. The employee is required to do the agreed upon work to the best of their ability. You also have to be a good worker. What does this mean? What does this entail? You have to arrive on time. You can't steal or commit other illegal acts. You can't get to work drunk or high. These sorts of actions are not permitted. If the employee does not comply with these rules, there may be a chance its contract can be terminated. In the next slide, I'm going to talk about different ways to terminate an employment contract. There are different ways it can be terminated. First one, the contract can end by operation of law. This means, for example, you have a contract that ends at January 1st, 2021. On January 1st, the contract is terminated by operation of law. If you go to work on January 2nd, and your employer doesn't say anything, then your contract will be automatically extended for the same period of time as the contract before. Next way to terminate an employment contract is to terminate the contract by mutual consent. This means that both employer and employee agree to end the contract on a certain day. This can be a useful tool to end the contract on an amicable basis. The employer or employee can also terminate the contract by notice. Both parties should keep the legal or agreed notice terms. The employer must also keep in mind that he cannot terminate the contract by notice without a dismissal permit. You can get this dismissal permit at the Ministry of Labor of Curacao. Dismissal with immediate effect is also a possibility. Keep in mind that there must be urgent reasons to terminate an employment contract with immediate effect. So if you plan to terminate a contract with immediate effect, I recommend you to seek legal advice immediately. On the other hand, if you are an employee and they just terminated your contract with immediate effect, seek legal advice. An employment contract can also be set aside by the judge. You can request this if there's a change in circumstances. What are changes of circumstances? This is, for example, if you don't trust each other anymore. The employer doesn't trust you, and there's a valid reason he doesn't want to be in the contract. So he can ask the judge to set aside the employment contract. Now let's quickly proceed with the freelance contract. Freelance contract or contract of services, it's both same thing. It's the same thing. It's a contract whereby one party, the provider of the services, the freelancer, binds him towards the other, the client, to perform work otherwise done on the basis of a contract of employment. So you do not have an employment contract. Therefore, you do not enjoy the labor law protection. Also, it must consist of work other than creation of a work of tangible nature. This is, for example, building a house, the safekeeping of things, the publication of work, or the carriage or transportation of persons or things. I must say, most provisions in the Civil Code of Curacao regarding the freelance contract are regulatory of nature and can be altered by contract. If something is not included in the agreement, you can always fall back on the provisions of the law. The freelancer must complete certain assignments tied to a service. Take, for example, consultants, accountants, doctors, architects, lawyers, hairstylists, musicians, or self-employed workers who provide a certain service. The same apply on a freelance contract. This can be formed both orally or in writing. The same apply here. I always recommend to enter into a written contract because because if you don't, it will be very difficult to prove what you agreed. I cannot recommend this enough. In the following graph, you can see the relationship between the client and the freelancer. The client has no authority over the way the freelancer provides its service. The freelancer is free to do its work as he sees fit. So, as you can see here, the client and the freelancer are on the same level. The client does not have an authority relationship with the freelancer. So let's move on to the next sheet. What are your rights and duties as a freelancer? A client can give a freelancer certain instructions. These instructions, however, must be given promptly. If a freelancer cannot follow these instructions, he can terminate the contract. So when can't you follow these instructions? For example, as an attorney, I have a code of conduct. Let's say my client wants me to deviate from the code of conduct. I'm not able to do that. This may be a reason to terminate the contract. Another reason can be because the client asks you to do something immorally or against the law. The freelancer has also the right to be paid and the right to recover their expenses. So what are these expenses? If the expenses are already included in the payment, these expenses can be like business trips or disbursements. As a freelancer, it's also your duty to keep the client informed while executing the assignment. If the client provides you with funds other than your payments, of course, to complete an assignment, you have to account for the funds. If the assignment was for you and only meant for you, you should carry it out, and you cannot outsource it to third parties. If the assignment was for your company and not for you specifically, you can outsource it to other persons and a third party. So let's move on to the ways a freelance contract can be terminated. The client can terminate the contract at any time. As said before, you can alter this by contract, and I recommend you to alter this because it would be somewhat unfair for the client to terminate the contract at any time. On the other hand, the freelancer can terminate the contract only if the contract is for an indefinite period of time or of serious reasons for termination. For example, what are serious reasons for termination? An example is lack of payments, change of circumstances, lack of trust in the client, etc. I recommend to alter this in the contract because you can put then a notice period in your contract, and so then both parties will know where they are at. The general rules of contract of yes, I haven't mentioned it, but you can also terminate a freelance contract by mutual consent. It's not on the sheet, but you can also terminate a freelance contract by mutual consent. Also, a freelancer contract can end by operation of law just because you terminated the service, for example. The general rules of contract law also apply on freelance contract, meaning that the contract can also be set aside by the judge if one of the parties are in default. I will now turn the floor back to Erica, who will tell you an important aspect of the freelance contract. Erica?
Thank you, Danilo, for the informative presentation so far. I hope you all enjoyed and were educated on some of the aspects of Curacao law in particular. I do think it's important to note for freelancers who are engaged in a contract that they do have certain freedoms and that they should be respected. Because if the client exercises authority over the freelancer, there is no use in signing a freelance contract. And one can say that they should instead consider signing an employment contract because the authority comes to play. So one can determine this authority by looking at the way both parties interact and work with each other. Is the employer, or the assignment giver rather, in this scenario, the client, if you will, telling you to go to work at a certain time, giving you instructions that are outside of your freedom, then you should be looking at an employment contract, I would say. And if it can be determined that parties who signed a freelance agreement actually engage with each other in an employer-employee relationship, then the contract can be converted into an employment contract. That means that there is the freedom on the parties to make this decision, but it is a recommendation that we can give. And then finally, I will summarize some of what Danilo has said regarding freelance contracts and employment contracts. I think the really key takeaways are that for freelancers, you cannot easily terminate a contract as a freelancer. You have to do your job. You have to finish the work, the assignment that has been given to you. But there are exceptions that can be made. You know, when your client is not acting lawfully, as has been mentioned, or other circumstances that could, you know, if it's taking a very long time and your client is just not acting in a trustworthy manner. Another important aspect is that there are very few to no labor law protections for freelancers, whereas in Curacao, employees have the full protection of labor laws, which is something we really enjoy here on the island. And if both parties act as if they were in an employment contract, as I already stated, the freelance contract can be converted into an employment contract. Whereas with employers, an employment contract, an employer has authority over the employee, their day-to-day work, what time they go to work, the way that they should conduct themselves, and so have you. So that concludes our talk. We hope that this was informative for you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now to us, or Luke, I'm sure we'll have a conversation. And if you feel more comfortable discussing certain issues, certain cases with us personally, this is our contact information, and we look forward to speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but there's one question that was asked that I really want to ask you two. That is by Rooney Calmero. If you two would be able to create a standard freelance contract, like a template, for people in Curacao to use, but maybe also for outsiders to hire people from Curacao. Do you already have something like that, or could we maybe craft something like that?
Well, it's very difficult to make a template because every situation is different. Of course, we can put some general provisions in it's a kind of template, but a freelance contract, it can be very broad. Like I said before, you can be an accountant as a freelancer, but also a hairstylist. So they're both very, very different. But at that, we could make something like a template with the most important things, but then as an employer, not as employer, as a client or the freelancer, you then will have to amend it to your needs.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds good. Yeah, I think just having kind of the skeleton, the raamwerk available could already help people a lot because they might have no clue on where to start. Just being like, hey, this is the service you provide. This is what you need. I think having a template like that could help a lot. And I would love to share that with the rest of the community. So thank you two again.
We can make that. No problem.
Thank you two again. I think you guys will join the roundtable later today, and then we can maybe ask some more questions relating to law. Thank you very much. All right. Up next, I'm going to welcome Stacey Mac Donald on stage. Stacey, let me get you in. She's one of these people that do everything at the same time. She's doing a PhD. She co-founded. Oh, wait, there she is. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you.
I was just bragging about everything that you're doing. Maybe you can walk us through a little bit.
Yeah, I will also elaborate on this in the presentation that I will give in a bit. But I think, like you mentioned, I am one of those persons who's really bad at saying no. So I tend to do a lot at the same time. I'm currently finalizing my PhD. I have my own company called Mac & Field, which is focused on environmental management consultancy. And I am involved in a lot of, different projects, research projects. And I will share more during my presentation as well.
Exciting. Feel free to share your slides. Good luck.
Thank you. Let's see. Cool, it works. So, hi guys. Thank you, Luke, for inviting me, and Andy, of course. I'm very excited to talk with everyone today. Quite nervous, but that will be fine. So my talk is called Doing the Work Because We Give a Damn, Building Bridges for the Future of Humanity. And I was thinking later, maybe I should have changed the title to Doing the Work Because I Give a Damn, but I think I'm not the only one who gives a damn. So I decided to leave it as is. So today I want to share a bit about my background, my interests, the work that I'm doing, and how and why I think the way I approach my work is the only way, or at least a very fundamental way of achieving change in today's society. So I also love to receive questions during the presentation. So it makes it more fun for me, but we can also see what works best. All right. Let's see, how do I go to the next slide? Like this. Cool, so a bit about me. So my name is Stacey. I was born and raised on Curacao, but I always considered myself as a child of the Dutch kingdom. My parents are Surinamese. My mom was born on Aruba. I have family in St. Maarten. I have a lot of family in Suriname, a lot of family in the Netherlands. So I think that's a fair representation of what the Dutch kingdom is. And I also kind of identify with all these different, aspects of the Caribbean and the Netherlands as well. I have studied psychology. I'm an environmental psychologist, which means that I'm very interested in the interaction between humans and the environment. I'm a scientist. I'm currently working on my PhD, which I already mentioned. And I'm also an entrepreneur. About 2-3 years ago, I've co-founded my company, Mac & Field, which I will talk about in a little bit. And I think all of this kind of can be summarized in me being a thinker, a talker, a listener, which is, I think, very important these days, but also a doer, which cannot be left out. So these topics will reoccur throughout the presentation. So to start a bit with my story, I have two very big passions. One is the planet, the planet that we live on. And currently it's hurting bad. As we all know, I think we're all feeling the consequences of us not treating the planet very well. And on Curacao, sitting in isolation. Here in the Netherlands, we still have some freedom, but it's not a very nice time to be in. And we are still working towards kind of getting over this crisis. And And the second passion of mine is people coming together, working towards achieving a common goal. And I think that's something that we don't see often enough. We do see it happen, but not often enough. So these two things combined really emphasize what I do and why I do it. So to go a bit deeper into that, there are some experiences that triggered me growing up, but also later in life with all the things that I've been doing. And I wanted to share 4 of those that I think are very important in explaining my whole approach to work and life, and me saying that I'm building bridges to save humanity. I mean, what does that even mean? So one of the first experiences is kind of a silly one. I was always super excited, or in a weird way, when people immediately were getting off the road once they heard sirens. So for example, when an ambulance or police car or fire truck would pass by, and then all of a sudden you would see the entire road clear up, make room, make space, and work together, and boom, the car could pass through. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I love it when people work together and they achieve this. And I mean, it's a kind of a weird situation to be excited, because something bad is probably going on, quite likely, but that feeling of unity and collaboration, that always really fired me up, and I loved seeing that. And it was not only like in bad situations, but also in good ones, when my family would come together, or friends, or just volunteers, doing some kind of work to achieve a goal. It would always just light up my heart and make me so happy, something I want to see more and more. Even in this crisis, seeing people come together and organizing stuff. So that's one thing. And then a second thing is, I noticed during my work with my PhD, that especially in social sciences, but also natural sciences, I think in a lot of disciplines, we kind of tend to have this tendency that we have a lot of solutions or ideas on how we need to change society, or how to deal with the challenges that we're facing, but we're not really doing anything with it, except for, writing all these scientific papers or books, or, maybe giving a conference or a presentation, and then kind of expecting the rest of society to just use this information and, be great. But that just never really happens. So that started to itch, especially doing work in the Caribbean myself. A third observation was that ecologists and nature activists, so I'm talking very generalizing right now. So of course, this does not account for everyone and anyone, but that was just kind of a general feeling that I was having. So ecologists and nature activists that I encountered often claimed that, to help the environment, or to save the world, save the planet, we just need to get rid of all the people, because there are too many people and we are causing too much harm. And, just getting rid of the people or not considering the people, that's the solution to saving the environment. And I mean, I guess that could be effective, but let's be honest, it's not realistic. It's not desirable, if you ask me, and there has to be another way. Moreover, humans are the culprits often of the damage that we're causing. But that also means that we can be and come up with the solutions that we need. So yeah, that's just not, it just kind of frustrated me whenever I would see, someone being so angry with people, which I understand, because sometimes I also share that anger, but I don't feel that's effective or productive. And then the last one has a lot to do with accountability and responsibility. And I always get super frustrated when I hear and see people blaming others with different views for all the problems in the world. So just because they think or they do this, that's why we're all going to hell. Well, yeah, okay. So that's just kind of a pet peeve. I think it speaks for itself. So then, what am I doing? Next slide. As I mentioned, I do quite a lot. I have a difficulty in saying no. So I've been doing a lot of things. One thing I do is scientific research, but I also want to combine research with practice. One of those pet peeves of mine, how can we translate all the theory, all the things that we get to know, how can we actually use it in daily life? And then I decided I also wanted to combine research and practice with sustainable entrepreneurship. So I started my own company because, we have all the time in the world, writing a dissertation. So. And then lastly, that's kind of the last venture that I've been taking on the past couple of years, is that I want to combine research, practice, sustainable entrepreneurship with governance and politics, because I think that's also a very important pillar in our societies if we want to achieve change. So I will elaborate on these in the following slides with some more concrete examples. All right. Don't take all my words too literally. We're not all going to hell. That's just figure speech. It might not be the nicest example. So the first thing in terms of scientific research. So for my research, I focus on the Caribbean Netherlands, as we call them now, so Bonaire, Saba, and St. Eustatius. And my main topic was, or my main goal with my research was to understand nature conservationists in the Caribbean. So working on these 3 islands, interviewing a lot of these activists and these people working for local NGOs, and doing all they can to save the environment. That's kind of the moment that I saw that often in science there's insufficient implementation of the things that we find, that we can kind of conclude in our research, and that we give that responsibility to other parties to execute. But that's often not realistic for them to achieve. So. And this is also the moment where I started to encounter a lot of ecologists and biologists saying, well, we just need to get rid of the humans, which I don't think it's gonna happen, or it's fair or realistic. So, and what I also noticed is that all these people that I was interviewing or talking to often were saying, well, we need people to change, but then they were not really focusing on human behavior. They were just focusing on, setting up areas to be protected, or, coming up with laws that things were no longer allowed, or, coming up with all these kind of hard measures without really delving into the human side of what was going on and what was happening. Again, this does not account for everyone, but that was kind of a trend that I was observing. So that also triggered me in, how can we change this? Because for me, it's super self-evident to consider human behavior, because that's my background, right? I'm a psychologist, so I always look at human behavior and what people are doing. So I was just kind of surprised and flabbergasted that that was not self-evident for everyone else, which is maybe a bit naive, but that's something I learned. Then the second thing. So about halfway through my PhD, I got approached by the World Fund of the Netherlands, the WWF, and they asked me if I could help them with a problem they were facing, namely that they found it very difficult, or they wanted to understand why it was so difficult to manage fisheries in the Caribbean Netherlands. And I think the first thing I said was, well, it's not really about the fish, but it's about the people. And I'm not referring necessarily to the fishermen. I'm referring to the entire human system behind fisheries. We need to look at human behavior again, and not so much about counting how much fish are actually in the water. And one of the other things that I said was, well, I think you need to start to include the fishermen. They need to have a voice in this process, because one thing we noticed was that the government and the scientists and the NGOs, they were coming up with all these measures and rules and regulations, but they were not including the fishermen in these process, which caused a lot of protests and disagreements and conflict and, well, obviously mismanagement, or nothing was really coming off the ground. There was a lot of frustration and anger. So I was saying, well, why don't you include these fishermen in the process, or fishers in general? Because they also need to have a say. They also know what's going on. They also have a lot of knowledge. Why were you not listening to them? And then everybody was telling me, well, yeah, we tried, but it's super hard to get them organized, because, they need to be able to talk with the government and with the scientists, and it's really hard to organize it. And I was like, well, I guess, but it shouldn't be impossible. So they agreed that the fishermen had to be included, but they also said, well, it's just never gonna work. And when people tell me something is not gonna happen, I make sure it happens. So after a lot of months of work with the fishermen and really saying, well, guys, listen, I don't know anything about fish, but I do think it's important for you to have a say in what's going on. What can I do? What can I do to help? And what will empower you to be part of this process? So what I did is I really mediated the process. I kind of I learned and I listened and I tried to, organize these setups and these meetings and these conversations, which ultimately resulted into the fishermen establishing a fisheries cooperative, which gave them, the platform and the credibility to really talk with all these policymakers that already were super established, but then their voice was now finally also being heard and being taken into account in this process. And that also resulted into very positive things for them. So they got also a lot of, benefits out of it. It's still not perfect. The thing is, it's a process, and I had to leave Bonaire quite early. But what I did see, the fisheries cooperative, they still exist, and what I noticed that despite all the setbacks, because it was really difficult to organize and was very challenging, nobody really had faith that it was going to happen, but every time it would happen and we would achieve something. So for example, the moment you see in this picture here was the moment that all the fishermen agreed that they wanted to have the cooperative, and they voted for their board members. And if you look really closely, you see the governor of Bonaire sitting somewhere in the room as well. And that was just such a beautiful moment. Again, people coming together, having this common goal in mind and being willing and able to work together for it. And that was kind of the process that I wanted to achieve with them. So that, again, fueled me like, yeah, this is what we need to do. It's not just only talk. It's also kind of putting what we know and putting this knowledge into practice and empowering people to do that. Then another thing that I'm doing. So my company. So the work that I've been doing so far has a lot to do with research, trying to translate that research to practice. And then I also wanted to venture a bit into sustainable entrepreneurship. And this was mainly inspired when I was in St. Eustatius for fieldwork. And that's where I met one of those, ecologists that I was mentioning earlier, only he wasn't one of those that was super stubborn and anti-humans or anti-people. But he was still kind of stuck in this way of thinking, saying, well, the only way we can solve these environmental issues that I'm working on is by, getting rid of the people, or people are just kind of annoying and they are, harming these animals and these species, and they just need to stop. And I was like, yeah, but okay, I get that, and maybe that behavior needs to change, but, have you talked to them? What do they think about it? Why are they doing it? And then all of a sudden we had these really cool conversations about, okay, you have this knowledge as an ecologist on what needs to happen and what are the critical dangers, things that I don't know. But I also have the skill and the knowledge to, get in touch with the human side of it, or the behavioral side of it, and see what we can, if we maybe combine those forces, let's see what we can accomplish together. So super excited as we were, we decided to join forces, and we established our company called Mac and Field, where we execute and develop environmentally related projects. So one of the big projects that we had done or have done is called Reforestation, which is a really large-scale reforestation project on St. Eustatius, where the goal is that we're planting a lot of trees to reforest and make the island a bit greener. The main reason for doing so, because the island doesn't look very, dull. As you can see in this picture, it looks quite green. But they have a really big goat problem. There are a lot of roaming goats, and they eat everything. So all the grass that you see is super short, which means that the soil is heavily eroding, and so that's not good. So we want to replant the trees. But what we did know is that we want to plant these trees, but if you don't tackle the goats, then all our effort is going to be wasted. So even though we want to plant the trees and we're cultivating the trees, and we set up this really big project, which you can learn more about on our website if you want to, or on STENAPA's, which is St. Eustatius NGO, Facebook page, for example. One of my main goals with this project was kind of to stimulate the government who was funding this project to do something about the goats, kind of get to the core of the issue. it's not so much that the trees don't grow, but they don't get a chance to grow. So why don't we get rid of the goats? But the goats are very political and a very, culturally sensitive issue. Well, we were able to kind of use this project as a incentive for the government who was funding it, to do something to address the goat problem. So that's something that we did. So it was not only about planting the trees, but also going into the governmental side. And I need to start rounding up. I see Luke appearing. So I'm going to skip one slide. So this one was more about my fourth goal, which is kind of new. It's the fourth pillar, where I also kind of want to include more governance and politics in the work that I'm doing. So finally, just to round up really quick, I don't know if you've started to notice a pattern. So what I'm doing in my work is, on the one hand, I want to harvest and unite knowledge and skills through empowerment. I want to convince hard-headed people with creative action. So I'm using creativity in that sense. I want to talk, I want to act, and I want to remain open and critical. So what are we actually working with? What is the core of the issue that we're targeting? So I think in all of my work, I want to unite people. I want to unite scientific disciplines. I want to unite interest perspectives by building bridges. And then I'm just going to leave this page up during the questions and discussions. These are just some tips that I have for how to remain and be of value. So maybe we can go into the questions, Luke, and I can share these along the way.
Thank you very much. Also for rounding up so quickly. You did amazing. No need to be nervous.
Okay.
All presentations as well as the recordings will be shared afterwards. We take some days to cut everything together, but it will be there so everybody can take a look at this and internalize it. I wish we had 10 more minutes for you. I think we can already invite you to come another time, maybe in a month or so, to share more specific knowledge. But this was great. Thank you very much. Look at the comments. Everybody's happy.
Great.
All right. We'll have you back on stage in the end, and then maybe we can answer some questions.
Sure.
Right now, I'm going to kindly ask you to leave the stage and make room for the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
All right, that was wonderful. So we're going to round it up with the last presentation for tonight. After that, we're still going to do a roundtable, and we're going to share some messages with you. So up next is Levi Silvanie. He was also presenting last week when we organized a session completely in Papiamento. We had some technical difficulties, actually. This is quite a fun story. 20 minutes before the webinar, our technology stopped, and I called Andy. I'm like, Andy, this is not working. What do we do? And we had like 5 minutes of complete chaos. And then we just decided to move on, and Levi and everybody moved on as well. And I think in the end, we had a really great and fun session. All right, there you are, Levi. Welcome.
Yes, sir.
How are you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, man. It's what time here? Let's see. It's almost 10:15, but I'm still feeling fresh, so that's good.
Awesome. Let's get started. The stage is yours, brother.
Thank you. Let me quickly open my presentation. So first of all, I want to say thanks for the opportunity to take the stage, and thanks for the invite to be a part of this. I think it's a really cool thing. It's my second time with you guys. I'm super nervous also, like Stacey, but I'm gonna stay close to my lane. So I want to do this whole thing in the form of a story. I think that's the best way for me to go about it. So I want to start by taking you guys back to where it all started. My name is Levi Silvanie. I'm an artist and creative entrepreneur, founder of Open House Concerts, Cheese Me Miss, and I am the co-author of Hardy the Book. But my story started very different than what most people might think or know of me. I grew up poor, but in fact, I grew up very rich in let's say gifts and creative talent, driven by a need to progress in life. I think that's the reason, and also driven by a need to help others to kind of achieve the same, right? And this wasn't something I kind of put on myself or was taught to me or was forced in me. As a matter of fact, I did my very best throughout my teenage years to actually avoid um, being this person. Why? Because I always thought I was kind of like a weird introvert guy that was looking at the world trying to, you know, change it or perfect it or help it, right? Um, and my plan was really different. My plan in life was to just be as close as possible to music, and I thought that I would become a professional musician. Well, honestly, in 2007, when I moved to the Netherlands, my dream came true after I dropped out of college and decided I'm gonna become a full-time freelancing drummer. But unfortunately, the unexpected happened. Almost a year into my career, I had a car accident, crashed. Fortunately, I'm still alive. But on that night, my plans in life changed, um, and made me had to slowly but surely kind of revisit my game plan. And in that exact moment, I kind of turned to music. At first, music songwriting for me was not an attempt to become a professional artist. It was literally um, trying to give myself what I needed in life. And what I needed in life was a tool to keep me motivated and focused to do what I thought was my thing. And that is just stay as close as possible to music and not be broke. So, but since I was an independent at that point, I needed to make a living. So what I started to do was I just taught myself everything about the music industry, taught myself everything about music management, taught myself everything about branding, and just ran with it. Well, funny thing, within 2 years, I was standing on one of the biggest stages when it comes to festivals worldwide. That was Curacao North Sea Jazz, alongside with people I grew up looking up to: Stevie Wonder, Sting, Kasaf, Nile Rodgers. Um, but the thing was, I felt like I didn't belong there. And what a lot of people didn't know about me in my life was that during that time, I really struggled a lot with anxieties. And I actually spent almost like a year in 2012 feeling really depressed because um, I just couldn't see myself as a professional artist, as a celebrity, as someone making music to live off. You know, for me, it wasn't about that. Then in 2012, something really beautiful happened in Aruba. After I was there during a tour I was doing, that was actually one of the first times I did a show completely by myself. And in that moment, I realized for the first time what my music was actually, what it meant to people. And I feel like that was the first time also that I wasn't so focused on um, trying to play the part, in this case, meaning trying to be an artist. But that was the first time I truly, truly allowed myself to see how people was reacting to something um, that was happening very organically, right? And since 2012, by the end of the year, I decided that from there on, I will literally focus on embracing who I am and using that to build my career. That was where Gis Mimis was born. Gis Mimis as a one word term um, was translated from the song I wrote a few years ago, and transformed into, you can say, a personal mantra. But at the same time, I used it also as the formula of um, my business. Everything I do since 2013 is wrapped around this concept, right? I believe that self awareness, especially when we're talking about building a personal brand, self awareness is about mastering the art of applying who you are in everything you do. And all I wanted to do, like I said at the beginning, was be progressive and teach others how to achieve the same thing. So my game plan since 2013 became simple. Focus on what I have to do to get to what I don't have. Sorry, focus on what I have, what I do have, to get to what I don't have yet. And what I have was really simple: the ability to empower people, or empower businesses, or empower whatever I have. I recognize that I have the ability and the passion to empower people through stories. All I needed to do was turn these stories into products and services. And that became my core business. So imagine these stories came in the form of fashion. It came in the form of different formats, how to do concerts. Um, I don't have a lot of time, but I can promise you that in my career, people have told me so many times, coming from a very good place, that it's almost not possible to self sustain yourself in music or arts, coming from the islands, and let alone being an independent. But I do believe, again, when you focus from from the outside, what I mean with the outside is when you look at what you don't have, or when you look at the limitations, you will never be able to even identify, and let alone master the art of progressing on who you are. And when I say who you are, I'm not just talking about personal brands. I'm even talking about businesses, and the beauty of what I'm saying is, now more than ever, in these moments that we're going through, you see businesses or organizations or brands not having difficulties coping with these situations. And I think the reason why is, if you do not master the art of optimizing who you are in everything you do, basically you will be running behind the facts. So coming back to my story, I've literally developed uh, formats how to do concerts, do shows, in different ways, to make, again, what I do sustainable. So from big concerts or seated concerts combining music and combining film, or me bringing out a kids book together with one of my best friends, to again do the same thing I've been doing with music, but toning it down in a format that could be useful for building um, uh, 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 um, how you say, products and services for the educational part of the market. And in the same way, um, sometimes as an independent, it's very challenging to be able to travel the world if you don't have a big enough following yet. So that's where, for instance, we've developed Open House Concert, which is the ability, which gives us the ability to do world tours in homes around the world. So that's an ability, again, to kind of skip clubs or big festivals or big venues, but still be able to be an artist that comes from the islands, but go directly to the fans, different parts of the world. Anyways, in this in my part, what I wanted to share with you guys in the form of a story is something I believe to be very, very important. To me, business is not just being able to do what I love to do, but to me, it's also being able to share who I am and my gifts with this world. And I believe that it is our primarily responsibility to make sure that we can do so no matter what, and not be limited in what we can offer ourselves and the world when in doing so. And that's why I believe that the key is to always go back to one simple concept. Everything you need as a person, as a business, as a community, as a school, as a parent, or whatever, you are. But was that too fast?
It was maybe a little bit too inspiring, but not too fast. Definitely not. Thank you very much. We still have 4 minutes, so I think we can do some questions.
Yeah, sure.
I personally really loved the story you shared last week about Harty and how that came, how that journey kind of formed and ultimately became something that I think thousands of children are actually learning from, and how it relates to the island for you. So if you could also do that in English, that would be amazing.
Yeah, of course. And by the way, the reason why I didn't go into a lot of details of, let's say, the technicalities of what I do, because I wanted to kind of especially invite people to ask me. So I kind of gave highlights of what I do, so that maybe in the Q&A you can literally dive in, because I think I do Q&As better than just the presentation thing. But to go into your question, Luke, Hardy. So Hardy was written, I think, 12 years ago, something like that. And for the people from Curacao, Hardy, this is Hardy, by the way, you've seen it in the presentation. Hardy is actually a story about a heart that struggles with self-love and like, you can say, it has a identity crisis, and Hardy decides on a day to leave the body, or leave his room, in search of something better, right? The concept behind this book is literally how I look at myself and also Curacao, and coining that as not something limited to Curacao, but something that I believe any person or any community that has this island mentality, I call it island mentality. Why? Because we tend to believe that we're too small, or we don't have the right resources, or we don't have this, we don't have that. And again, in this case, Hardy had to learn how important his role in the world is. And at the end of the day, he realizes that he has to remain who he is, or yeah, um, literally, again, that's the concept, chisme concept behind the book. Also, you can try to be everything you want to be, but at the end of the day, you are you. And I think the key is to identify and learn how to master the art of being you in the things you do. So that's kind of the concept behind the book in terms of the storytelling. But then again, it's also a tool for a motivational tool when you approach it to the education sector. The book is a multilingual language book. So it has 5 languages: Papiamento, Papiamento, English, Spanish, and Dutch. The reason for that is, again, we were aiming to celebrate who we are as Dutch Caribbean islanders. why again a kid that's raised in a multicultural community that can speak at least 4 languages needs to be reminded at a young age, and also learn how to celebrate uh, the 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 power and potential of what that means to be able to do that. You know, some people don't even realize that until they travel when they grow old, and they travel, and people ask them, how is it possible that you speak Papiamento and English and Dutch and this and that? So that's, you know, with my experiences as an artist traveling to different parts of the world, realizing how rich we are as a culture, inspired this book to be again one of the ways to use story to uplift, empower, and inspire our young generation.
That's beautiful. That's nice. So I think the best way for us now to move forward, in a bit, we're going to do a roundtable around passion, around entrepreneurship, creativity, where people can ask all questions as well. Andrew Kirchner has joined me on stage, one of the co-organizers, I would maybe even say co-founders of Innovationcur. Maybe for the people that don't know, we organized an innovation event in the end of 2018. It was a complete positive mess. We just had a big mouth. We're like, hey, we're going to organize an innovation conference. People, let's join. Let's do this together. In 6 weeks, we organized this event in Chobolobo. We started first with 40 signups, then it became 60. Then it was like, oh, no, shit, we need to get better speakers. So we're like, hey, Andy, you're such an amazing motivational speaker. Would you be able to come? He's like, yeah, of course. So then a week later, we end up with 110 people, the prime minister at the event. It was crazy. And that was kind of the kickstart of Innovationcur. And now we kind of resurrected the movement together with the help of Andy and Rooney, and I think more and more people from the community. So I'll quickly do a little bit of Innovationcur stuff, and then I'll hand the word to you guys. I will stay on stage and maybe participate in the panel as well. I think it's important to highlight that Innovationcur is a constant transition as well, and it's also a constant me and being. So let me quickly share a couple of notes with everybody. So the first thing is, these speakers, they're just normal people like you and I. Everybody here has the potential to speak and has something interesting to share. So if you want to speak in any of these events, or if you want to host a webinar, if you want to host a workshop, if you have an interesting story to tell, please follow this link. I just shared it in the comments. You can sign up to become a speaker or become part of the Innovationcur organizing team. As well, we have created a platform, or we're in the process of creating a platform, especially for like-minded people from the Dutch Caribbean to work together on these projects. And I think the vibe in these webinars and these digital conferences so far has been amazing. Every time somebody gets on stage, people are like, hey, you got this. Thank you, this is great. And let's use this platform to keep the spirit alive and become more and more concrete, share our knowledge, share our skills, and create this better future together. So while we're doing that, you can also follow us, of course, if you're not ready to engage actively yet. We are on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Don't forget to tag us, post something about us. Maybe referring back to the first presentation, just start. If you want to get somewhere and you feel like you want to become an innovator, you already are an innovator, tag us, reach out to us, be like, hey, I want to do this, or this is holding me back, but I would like to do this. We can all do this together, and only if we work together, we can achieve greatness. So on these notes, I would like to hand the word to Andy. The stage is yours, man.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, all the participants, for being there. I saw a lot of inspiring new Corsos in there from all over the world. Some from the States, from Holland, from Curaçao, Aruba, Bonaire. Thank you all for being present, and thank you all for being so active also with the comments and with the questions. Before I start the roundtable, I also want to do a special shout out to Mayo for being present also and participating and looking at all these inspiring people that we have here. So thank you for that. And I'm gonna ask Luc if you can add the other people also on stage so we can have the roundtable all together. Luc?
I'm on it.
Okay,
You're on
thank
your
you.
way.
No, I didn't hear you. So, first of all, I'm going to start with complaining about Levi, of course, because I haven't seen any. Well, I saw myself in the background like this small,
I knew it.
like this small. What many people don't know and should know is that Levi has been a great inspiration for me when I was in the rehabilitation clinic. One day I came back from physical rehabilitation. I was sitting in my wheelchair. I was crying. I was weak. I was ready to give up. And the only thing I could think was, I want to hear "Jeez Me Miss." I totally forgot his name, but I remembered the face. I remembered the clip. I remember the song, and I remember the guy that sang it to me for the first time. I went to listen to "Jeez Me Miss," and it just cheered me up. It showed me there is someone in this world that thinks the same as me, that feels the same as me. And I was crying my heart out while listening to this song, and YouTube automatically goes on autoplay, and there was this next song that I didn't know, and this song didn't just break me to tears, but made me believe or remind me in something that I believed in, that I forgot that I believed in, and that was Levi calls it Amita or Amita Kosho, and I say for me it is my himno di Kosho. It is my anthem of Curacao, because it's written in an era that fits, and the song it says that I deserve a place in this world also, no matter which color I am, and that's what this book is about. I mean, his whole work comes back to that. "Jeez Me Miss," Amita, Hearty. Dude, another complaint. It's not signed. So as soon as this flight thing is over, you're coming back to Curacao to sign my book for me. So
Anyway,
that's it.
It's a problem.
I'm seeing Danilo, and I'm seeing Lysandro. I'm gonna start with the round table and see when the rest is also coming in. Lysandro, I mean, I'm trying to write my autobiography. So seeing you writing 3 books and Levi writing 1 book, I mean, I consider you 2 competition. So before I kick you off my screen, I want to know from you 2, how much courage did it take to publish a book? I mean, it's a book is something. It's not just a Instagram post like most of us post out there, but it's something physical that we can hold. How much courage that take?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. I do not want to discourage anyone who wants to write a book, but I had a very big struggle to publish my first book, because you are going to position yourself as a sitting duck. You are going to give people access to how you think on your perspective, and they can make you or break you. So I had to overcome that. I had to overcome that fear, and because I want everybody to know that I struggle with fear and doubt myself. That I have my insecurities. I just happen to know how to manage them. So my best advice is to just start with who you are, and once you can start explaining to your audience why you are authorized to write about your specific topic, the rest will follow.
Danilo, do you have any?
There's a limit to 6 streams. So if either Erica or Danilo wants to give Stacey a shot, maybe I think Erica, if you could, I think we already heard Danilo a lot.
Okay,
hold on. Do you mind giving the ladies a stage?
Let me ask Danilo a question, then we kick Danilo out, so Erica comes back, and that way everyone gets around. Danilo, I'm hearing, I almost want to call you Stacey. You look like a Stacey, Lysandro. But Danilo, would you have any legal advice for when publishing a book, especially now in this time when everyone is being online and writing their memoirs?
Well, something that's very important, always important, is your published rights. I mean, you have some rights as a publisher, and those you should also take those into account when writing. Do not copy things from other people. That would be my first advice. So, so yeah, I mean, I think publishing a book has it's not a freelance contract to be in the same to keep on the same contract, but when publishing a book, it's very important um, to for you. I mean, there's not a lot going on there. It's important for you to know your rights when publishing a book. It has a lot more to do with how do you call it, author rights, and that's kind of about it. I mean, when selling a book, there's other different rights that you have, but yeah, other rights is the most important things when selling a book or when publishing a book.
Okay. Let's continue. I'm gonna kick you off stage now, Danilo. Thank you. So we can have one of the
No
other
problem.
ladies on board. But just one question before you go, Danilo. I would like to know of everyone. How old are you? Of how young are you, depending on how you're looking at it. Levi,
I'm
let's start
26.
with you. Levi?
Me,
Yes. How young are you?
I'm 32 right now.
32. And Lysandro?
I'm 40.
40. You don't look like it. You look way younger. But
Yeah,
that's
man.
good for you. Luke?
I'm 16. No, just kidding.
You too?
I'm 22, I believe.
22. Okay. And Danilo?
I'm 26.
26. Okay. Well, apparently I'm the old fart here on stage. I'm 42. So, but I'm asking this because someone asked it in my private mailbox over here on WhatsApp. Like, what's the age of everyone over there? And can I also become a speaker? Yes, you can. If you have a nice topic, you're always welcome to introduce yourself to me or to Luke, and we'll take a look at it. I'm gonna kick someone out, and that's gonna be Danilo. So I can have either Stacey or Erica on board. Let's not call her Eric again because we made that mistake.
I'll get Stacey on board. You guys can continue with the questions.
Okay. There was a question to Lysandro. Can you hold up your books one more time so everyone can see them? Yes. So everyone can also see the title one more time. You can find Lysandro Levi both on Instagram, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. So if you have questions later, you can ask them over there. Levi, you launched your video clip just in this very chaotic period. Did you consider postponing it, or did you felt an extra need to go live with it right now?
Well, in all fairness, I can't take any credit for the timing of this release, because this was by all means divine intervention and divine timing. Why? Because Take Flight is a song that was written 8 years ago. We've tried to publish it at various times, and then life happened, and then this happened. And at the beginning of the year, we decided that it's going to be launched on the 2nd of March, the single, and the 27th of March would be the release of the music video. And it literally happened to be in this moment in time. And for everyone that didn't see the music video or heard the song yet, I think when I say divine intervention or divine timing, you would understand what I mean, because it literally suits this moment in time that we're going through.
Okay. Before I continue, the two ladies that are new in the round table, thank you very much for joining us for this last bit. I asked all the gentlemen their age. I know it's not very gentlemanlike to ask a lady for their age, but since I'm a pirate, I'm gonna do it anyway. You can block me later. Stacey, how young are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30. Wow. Okay. And Erica?
I'm 28 still.
You're 28. Okay, look at that. I'm really starting to feel very old right now. I have a question for you, Erica. Tienda Delay is mostly for people with low incomes. Now you're doing a webinar digital conference for entrepreneurs. Can entrepreneurs also contact Tienda Delay for information, support, or do you have a different location that you ship them to? Erica, we have a
computers.
Hold on. Can you restart because there was a problem with your connection?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, the answer is we welcome everyone to Tienda Delay.
Nice.
And there is a small fee for our legal advice, especially if you are able and willing to pay it, because it helps our mission, supports our mission to provide workshops to our members, to provide paper for the copy machine, what have you. So it keeps our business going, our mission going. So yeah, everyone is welcome, and we welcome it every day.
Okay, I might need to call you later to sue Luke for me because I need to get my loyalties from this. Stacey, you mentioned a lot of islands in your presentation where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as this is Innovationcur, we would like to know which island is your favorite. Luke, keep your finger already at the X button.
Well, obviously it's Curacao. I mean, I was born and raised there. Curacao is forever my home. But I have to say, prior to starting my PhD, I never went to Sabar Statia before. And those two islands are also pretty magical. So I think it's, I don't know, I think it's quite common for people on Curacao, at least at the, Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire, to know all the islands and St. Martin as well. But I feel that Saba and Statia tend to be a bit neglected in terms of visitors, but they are well worth the visit and absolutely part of our Dutch kingdom. So if you can, once the borders open again, I would definitely say go and visit and feel a bit more of our Dutch kingdom pride.
I just want to congratulate you. I said in the comments already, you are a pirate with a PhD. When I invited you for this talk, I already felt it, but in our introduction talk, I knew it for sure. And then when I hear you talk like that, you convinced me even more. As a Reef Resilience manager trainer, or ex-Reef Resilience manager trainer, I worked with people in the fishery, and I worked with divers. It's very difficult to get everyone on board.
Yeah.
What is your secret ingredient to get so many different stakeholders working together when everyone wants to take their own?
Yeah, so what I did on Bonaire, at least, is that I started to have conversations with all these different types of stakeholders individually first, to kind of get a sense of, what their interests were, what their concerns were, what they were, the thoughts that they were having, to kind of get a better understanding of it. And every time during those conversations, I was looking for the ways these very different groups often share way more commonalities than differences. And once I kind of was able to pinpoint that information, I would share it with them as well, to say, like, listen, at the end of the day, we all want to have, more fish in the reefs, either to look at or to be able to consume. Even as a diver, you also want to go to a restaurant maybe and eat some fish. So we need to find that balance together. And then I think also promising, or not necessarily promising, you always need to be careful with promises, but then saying, I would be there, or a person would be there to kind of mediate a conversation, choosing a very safe environment that wasn't too much representative of one stakeholder over the other. So on Bonaire, for example, we would go to like this community center, which was very, it was the threshold was low enough for fishers to go, but it was still professional enough also for serious conversations to take place. It wasn't like just a bar. Bars could be very informational as well, but to have meetings or conversations with all these stakeholders to come to agreements, those kind of spaces were very functional. And then just kind of guide those conversations, be really on top of it. So you need to do your research beforehand as a mediator. So kind of my main advice to WNF at the end of the whole road was, and also to the government still, maybe some of you have written or have read my policy brief that I wrote together with WNF. It was published, I think, last month, for fisheries in the Caribbean Netherlands. And basically the main thing there is that you need to work towards some form of co-management, getting these stakeholders together. And the only thing that you really, really need for that is to have this person that can kind of bring these people together. And those are hard to find, but yeah.
Absolutely, bridge builders are very important. I'm going to make a little bridge here because we're going to ask the most important question for everyone right now. I mean, COVID-19 all got us by surprise. And Lysandro said in the beginning something about strategies. And I can tell you one thing, my strategy really got stuck. My strategy is stuck under my bed, is stuck in India, and is stuck in stores. It's very hard to make my money right now, but that doesn't mean we give up. So, I would like to ask either, can you send me a sandwich, or can you share my strategy with me, or your strategy with me, what you're doing now to make money? I'm gonna go this in the order that you are in my screen, and I'm gonna start on my top left, and that's my brother from another mother, Levi Silvanie.
Yes, my strategy in this very moment, I think I've shared a lot in my story, but the most beautiful thing that I've gained out of my career up to this point is the ability that without even selling this or telling people about this, but as I did my thing, people started to come up to me and ask me advice and consultancy around branding, and especially personal branding, and how to go about certain things. So for the past year, I've been doing a lot of those, which fortunately can be done easily remotely. And so that aside that, which keeps my head well above water right now, I've been using this moment to especially focus on the different trades, crafts that I can master or even take to another level. But I must be totally honest that I've always been fascinated about being able to do as much as possible in an innovative way, but especially remotely, because as much we can say anything about Curacao, but one thing I've gained in my period when I went back for a while on Curacao is that our location is so beautiful because we're kind of like at the center of the whole world. And if you learn how to do whatever it is right, in a way, you'll be able to, see through any situation basically. And but anyone that wants to achieve that has to respect and understand that it has a lot to do with moving on to a more digital, a more remote, a more let's say, a more 2026 2040 way of thinking. That's basically it. So that's my strategy.
Okay, because we're almost on time, I'm gonna go straight to Lysandro. What is your strategy, or is your strategy just right now burning your books to have a campfire at night?
Well, I'm very privileged and I'm very honored to be in a position that I am. And you know, what I try to make people aware of is that faith is a strategy.
Amen.
And faith is something you can implement in different ways. You can either believe in yourself, you can either believe in the universe, you can decide not to believe in nothing, and you can decide also to believe in God. And as a faith-driven entrepreneur, I'm very aware of how I implement my faith, and I consider it a very reliable strategy as well. But let me give you this. Whatever you sell, either if it's a product or a service, or it's music or it's art, you always sell yourself first.
Yep.
And if you cannot sell yourself, if you cannot give people a good understanding of your values and beliefs and why you do what you do, I'm afraid it's not going to work out. You have to be able to sell yourself. And the most beautiful thing, and when I see all these spaces, I see so much talent in front of me, is you have to sell yourself as an original. Very often we try to imitate or replicate somebody who has been successful in a specific area. And trust me, it's not going to work out.
Nope.
I have been pushing spiritual entrepreneurship for many years. It wasn't an overnight success. There will be a book coming soon titled The Cost of Fruitfulness. And I will explain my journey in more details, because everybody thinks that when you write a book, you're a superstar or something like that. No, I'm just an average guy, and I have to sell books to eat, you know, and just like Levi Silvanie is an artist. At the end of the day, it's about selling who you are, not what you are. So that is my best advice to you. And I know you have a great heart, and I know you have a lot of talent. Your story is amazing, and you have a lot of potential. Sell that first, and the rest will follow.
Good, good answer. Of course, I'm very talented. I know that. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But Stacey, your take on that? What is right now? What are you doing to make money other than selling yourself? In which way?
Just let's keep it to 30 seconds, since we only have 3 minutes. And if Stacey starts being passionate, then
no, I'm not short.
Just throw her off stage now.
Yep. No, so it's quite challenging right now. But I guess I just continue with acquisition. You know, it's not as if I have a lot of money on the bank. I have some savings, so that's kind of pulling me through, to be quite honest. I'm focusing on just finishing my book, so my PhD, so I can fully focus on, you know, acquiring more projects. And I'm just emphasizing, like Lysandro said, just, you know, selling myself, selling my skills, and hoping that will get its stage at some point again.
Yep.
Just going to all the network.
I'm gonna go one person below from me on my screen, and that's Erica, Miss Pro Bono sites. So even if the lawyer doesn't work out, you can still build amazing websites. You can check out my website for that, secondlifecuracao.org. But Erica, what are you doing to survive right now?
Andy, I'm so sad I couldn't hear Luc or Lysandro speak because my computer is acting up. I'm sure it was great what Lysandro had to say, something about selling yourself. And during this time, I didn't plan to talk about pro bono sites because I was focused on Tienda. But I am really quite busy right now because I've always worked remotely. I feel like I rode the remote wave quite a long time ago, working in New York as a project manager. And now I'm just like, I started this company and I work from home. I have my clients. I have things coming up. And I also offer to create pro bono like sites free of charge for good causes on the island that are providing relief. So I'm working with them. I can't really name them right now until it's really all settled, but some exciting things are coming down the pipeline. And I think my advice for others would be to find a way, and I can always coach people through this, or I can always provide free advice, as I'm sure a lot of people here can, on how to tap into your skills and provide them on a digital platform. I'm just thinking out loud. Levi could, teach people how to sing, and Stacey can really continue her advocacy work online and get her donations, get her funding, and everything is going to take a different turn. But I do see a lot of jobs flourishing at this time. They just have to rethink the way that they're providing their services to the world.
Thank you very much, Nat. Before we're gonna round up, and I'm gonna give the word back to Luc. I want to give a couple of tips for the ones creatives like me that don't know how to get around. Take a look at Patreon, patreon.com. It doesn't bring in huge tons of money, but it can help you at least a little bit. You can find me on there as the recycled pirate, also to have an example. But at least try something. As we have seen already, these are our export products. Levi, Silvanie, Lysandro, Inacio, Stacey Mac Donald, Erica Obersi, Danilo Narvaez, if I hope to say it exactly, and the person that I'm gonna give the mic right now, Luc Weber, founder of Innovationcur, and part of the Caribbean Blockchain Network and Cura. Thank you so much for this opportunity, everyone. One thing before I go, when you're done over here, we didn't have the chance to show it to you right now in this webinar, but please go to YouTube and Levi Silvanie, take flight, and get inspired by his latest video clip. Luc, your mic.
Thank you very much, Andy. I will give you a shout out as well. If you have a couple of dollars to spare and want to support Andy, his Patreon is the place to be. Patreon is kind of an old tradition that was back in the Middle Ages, where rich people would kind of support people that they see are creating a lot of value in the world. And now with the beauty of internet, you can support people from a couple of dollars a week. And it truly helps these creators to keep on being a positive force in the world. We're already a little bit over time, so I'll keep it short. My tips, I think the biggest one would be to take it easy. I always have like 1 or 2 months of savings left, which kind of keep my mind relaxed. And then the second one would be to work together with people that have a positive mindset. Yes. I think getting positive signals and positive feedback loops helped me get out of this comfort zone. I mean, the first day it was locked down. I was like, shit, this is suck. I don't want to work online. I don't want to do this. And that's exactly the moment where I'm like, hey, Andy, what you doing? You want to do a webinar? And he's like, let's do it. Let's go for it. When can we do it? And I think for me, that's also the trigger. Like, hey, other people are in the same situation. We're all trying to do something. So reach out to this friend that you know, or reach out to this ex-colleague and to ask them, what are you doing? Let's do something together. Let's do a digital conference together. So yeah, I think summarizing that all together, this is a great opportunity for all of us to reinvent ourselves, to really go deep into ourselves, to do all the stupid things that we never got to do. For example, I'm working on my website, which I never, it's always something that you put on the bottom of your list. Turn your list around. You don't have a lot of responsibilities now. Start with the things that you never have the time to do. Yeah, I think that's it for me. I think we can round it off now for today. This was a great session again. I would like to thank all of the speakers, all of the attendees. We actually passed the limit today, so we need to get a bigger room for next time. We had over 100 people at some point. The system doesn't allow more people in, so next time we're going for 250 people. I can already share that Andy, and both me and Andy are working on the next edition, so there will be at least 2 more editions. Again, if you want to be part of this movement, everybody is welcome. Fill in the form, join the community. The links are in the comments. Follow us on Facebook, socials, everything. Let's build a beautiful future together. Thank you all again. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Final thank yous. Thanks. All right. Goodbye, everybody.